The title of the presentation today is Changing or Charging the Future, Why We Need a Grassroots-DePIN for Charging Infrastructure to Work. And let me explain that a little bit to you. As you might have noticed, and this is something that also you would see in Brussels specifically or close by in the Netherlands, you can see a lot of electric mobilities, electric cars, electric vehicles being driven around. It's massively subsidized by the governments, and it's really pushed forward. So you would assume that at the moment we are really in the middle of the electric mobility revolution. The EV charging infrastructure itself is expected to grow by 30x until in the next 5 to 10 years. So a massive growth in there. At the same time, you see that legislations in countries such as Britain, Israel, or Singapore, or also in the European Union, the ban of the sale of combustion engine vehicles is really driven forward or is already decided. Same also goes for the EV fleet. So it is expected that EVs could reach up to 86% of the global vehicle sales, and the EV fleet in the EU itself being aimed to be at 40 million EVs. So all of this actually sounds quite nice. We are really in the middle of the electric mobility revolution, but it is actually at risk. And the risk is, well, at many players, but I will focus a bit more on the charging infrastructure because that is actually one of the bigger risks that we have in there. So charging infrastructure is quite hard to scale. It's not that simple. You have to take into account the local grid requirements, you have to take into account the local legislations. It is a physical infrastructure that needs to be connected. Socket types are different with different models. Socket types are different with different countries. You have different power outlets, all these kind of things. So charging infrastructure is quite hard to scale, actually. Second of all, that infrastructure is locked. So you have a few big players actually in the market who are owning a large part of that infrastructure at the moment, or are actually producing that large part of the infrastructure. Typically, this is companies that are the energy providers. Then, third of all, they are usually working on centralized legacy systems. And it always sounds as if this was some made-up idea or something just to give another additional argument. But if you think about that, these large so-called CPOs, charge point operators, are actually sending out their files mostly still via Excel files. There is no API integration or stuff like that taking place. In many cases, then this becomes very clear. So that infrastructure is really very old. It's based on legacy systems. And additionally, and that plays into that as well, there is a big lack of innovation. So the willingness for these players that are already in the market to really innovate in there is really low, because for them it's a very small part of their revenue sources. So they don't really have any interest. For the energy provider, charging infrastructure is really just a side business at the moment where nobody really earns money with it, right? And all of this eventually leads to the situation that for the users, they have a very broken user experience. They might receive invoices which are wrong. They might receive the invoices delayed. They have to manually invoice or pay because the companies are not able to actually charge them directly. All these kind of things. Then they drive to a charging station without actually knowing if that charging station is blocked at the moment or not. Because if a combustion engine vehicle parks on a charging station, you don't see that in your app. You have no idea if that charging station is actually really available or not. So this is a big issue, and for the users, actually the pains are really high if you don't have your private charging station at home. And this is where we really believe that the DePIN approach can solve that in the future. And what we want to do and what we are aiming to build eventually as a vision is to enable the charging ecosystem to build the world's largest charging platform by and for itself. So with the DePIN flywheel, which you can see actually on the right-hand side there, innovators can easily build and scale their products and monetize from that platform, while users can utilize the platform to the fullest potential and benefit operationally and financially. So you have a stronger community, you have more partners that lead to more products on the platform, which lead to more revenue, and you have the DePIN flywheel effect, right? Might sound nice, might sound like, okay, that's reasonable, but how do you actually get there? Because you both need the supply and you need the demand. And that's exactly where DePIN comes in. Because we can onboard users, and I mean, we have so many projects here talking on stage or just being here who have grown to hundreds of thousands of users within a year, because there is a big user base already interested in DePIN projects. And they know how it works. They know that with the token incentives and the gamification and the community that is behind that, that these are projects that are really relevant for them, where they can really start being a part of that community, being a part of that project, and being interested in it. Then, in the next step, what we will integrate is the private charging, peer-to-peer charging ability. So basically, if you have a wall box at home, you can integrate your private charging station into the network and enable other people to charge on your private charging station. This gives two benefit sides mainly. One is your charger is actually being utilized. Second of all is you grow the network. And additionally also, you as the person who provides that private charging station can actually monetize it. It's even better if you have a solar energy thingy installed on your roof, because then basically your energy is for free and you can actually sell it. All of this is enabled with the charging platform. Then, next step is to enlarge that platform by onboarding public charging stations via the so-called CPOs, so the charge point operators, the ones that are actually innovative. The EMSPs, which are the electromobility service providers, which is basically the companies that you use right now if you charge your electric vehicle. And then also onboard energy providers and the OEMs, so Audi, BMW, Mercedes, all of these. And eventually, this further down the line will hopefully lead to the situation that we can democratize the global EV charging infrastructure by having a base layer on which everybody can onboard themselves, can onboard others, can build upon and can monetize and actually improve the charging infrastructure, which is currently a big issue. We just released the first version of our app, so I see a lot of people with their phones here. If you want, of course, feel free to download the app. It's very basic at the moment. You can review charging stations that are public in your vicinity. Very soon, the next iteration of the app will basically be launched, which will then enable you to add your private charging station and to also add other public charging stations. So we are currently in the phase of growing our user base, which is why it's good to have a lot of people in here who could be potentially interested in it. And yeah, if you have any questions on how that works in the detail, what the future plans are, and how we actually aim to really bring that on track and bring that to reality, feel free to approach me afterwards. And yeah, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for taking the time, and all the best. Thanks.